Wrapping up another deer season, we're going to start doing more of our Whitetail Instinct podcast, something we do throughout the off season to go more in depth on what happened during the year, our scouting process, and just questions that you guys have. So to start, we're going to do a kind of a wrap up or an overview of our year this past fall. Kind of go through using the tree saddles, main takeaways that both me and Brody had, and just going through, touching on some of the highlights and lowlights maybe of the season. So we'll start going through our year in review kind of on this Whitetail Instinct podcast.
So I guess to start out with, it's probably just the tree saddles was the main thing we went into the year. That was probably the big difference. And we used Arrow Hunter Kestrel Flex tree saddles this year. There's a link in the description of this video and in the podcast description if you want to check those out. It's the big craze right now, especially in the hunting industry for bow hunting and stuff. I know ATA is going on right now, and there's a whole bunch of new designs for all that stuff, and kind of the big craze, I guess. And we gave it a shot this year. Like I said, used the Arrow Hunter tree saddles, and I liked them. I guess it's kind of, we have somewhat of a difference of opinion on them, but I liked them just mainly based off the whole weight factor. Like, we weren't carrying a whole big tree stand in there, and I felt like I could go and get to the places I wanted without dreading carrying all that weight on my back.
You know, early in the season, September, once for sure, we were using them. I used them early, and I was going to go sit over a food plot on public land, and it was a close walk, so I decided to take the tree stand and just do it that way. And it was an easy walk down the road, and the food plot's literally right there, like super easy. So I went in there with the tree stand, and I didn't have to walk very far, and I realized how much I missed just carrying in the saddle. Mm-hmm. But then the one thing for me, it just takes getting used to. I still feel like I can sit longer in the tree stand. It might just be that I'm more used to it, but then towards the end of the year, I did get more used to sitting, and me making sure I get my tree saddle hung and set up in the right, the right height and the right tree stand, like my steps and everything are good. That's the key for me to making it more comfortable. Is making sure I set it up more correctly, and then it was fine.
There's a lot that goes into it and figuring out how to set it up. There are a bunch of different things, I think, when we started as far as how you want to set it up, but then once you get that, it becomes more comfortable. We also didn't use a platform. We just used the double step on the top stick, so we were limited as far as the angle and places of shots that we could get. So I know definitely going forward, we're going to want to get platforms that allow us to, I think, make it more comfortable to stand there the whole time.
Yeah,
and then
not
also
on a bar.
Yeah, and then for your feet, and then also we can make more shots, because we were having to go in knowing that we could really kind of shoot just this half, because there's really no way to turn on just the double step. But if you want more shots, get the whole saddle hunting experience so you can get around the whole entire tree, you definitely need the platform we found.
Yeah, and they're super easy to get up in the tree. Like, that's not the issue we were having. Like, you can get up super quick with steps and get up and set. It's the fine-tuning it for you. It's so new that they're still evolving as people are still using it, because it became such a big thing so quick that I think even the manufacturers are evolving as the people using it are evolving and learning, because it kind of all happened at the same time.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm going to keep using it, because the thing that I really want is something that's lightweight and allows me to walk as far as I want to and go where I need to go. Like, if I got to cross a swamp or something, you got to, wear waders or do something different like that. It's way easier to do that and get to places with the saddle. The being lightweight, not carrying all that gear in, especially when we have camera gear. If we didn't have any camera gear, it'd be so light.
Yep.
But just go in with a saddle in your bow and climb up in the tree. So I'm going to keep using it just because of the lightweight. That's the big thing for me anyway, is being able to just get to where I want to get to.
Yep, and I never noticed the lightweight portion until I did carry a tree stand in a few times, and then you realize how lightweight the tree saddles are. So I guess we'll move on now. I guess my idea was let's just go through, let's start in September, if we can remember back that far, and see what kind of the topics were for September. To me, the thing that jumps out was finding the deer right away. I know we came down to my area of the state and did some velvet scouting early. Had
a little bit of success.
You've
scouting,
seen
but not what we expected.
A couple nice bucks near, adjacent to public land. We never actually got back there because of how high the river was. And I don't think anybody probably got back there, so there's probably bucks back there. But where those bucks were coming out of, I
got back there once when it started to storm.
Yeah, so we never got back to that spot. But so September was really just trying to find the deer kind of in my area of the state.
An early season pattern.
Yeah, it was hard to get on them, and I guess the main thing we learned is, if that was controversial, apparently according to the videos, when some of the comments and stuff, was in-season scouting. But that's the thing I learned, is that if you're not finding the deer, spend a day and just scout, because I walked that property kind of had a little bit of a familiarity with it from the year before, but found some fresh rubs, some fresh sign, and there was deer on that food plot. I ended up seeing quite a few that night, a bunch of does and smaller bucks.
Just no big bucks.
No big bucks, but we found the deer, and you went back again and seen some
Yeah.
smaller bucks. And we never did get to go back to that property really ever, not that food plot area.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like we used to do, is just bounce around to try and find them, but when that doesn't work, scout to try to find them
Yeah.
and use that knowledge.
Yeah, and that's the thing that was controversial in the comments, but it's like when you went and scouted, we are, obvious that there's other hunters there. So you went at 12 o'clock in
It was
September,
like 11 o'clock.
in the middle of the day, and if you would have pulled into the parking lot and saw 2 trucks parked there, we're not going to go in there and ruin somebody else's hunt. But if you go in the middle of the day when there ain't no other hunters there and kind of scout on the outskirts, it doesn't do anything. Plus, if you're not walking through there hunting, or if you're going through there and you're scouting, someone else has probably gone through there and hunted, and they're worried about deer smelling you and that kind of thing. But it's like, it's in-season scouting. You have to scout during the year, especially in September. If you're not finding the deer where you're at, it does you no good to just climb back up in that tree stand and keep staring at the leaves. Like, get out there and find something, especially when they're making rubs, losing that velvet early in September. If you go and you find those rubs, those are fresh rubs, and they're in there right now. Why would you not scout during the year? You're always scouting. We are, anyway.
It's public land, and you don't know how many times you've gone down to public land and had seen someone else coming in or walking out or doing something that wasn't even hunting
Walking
related.
their dog,
So
picking berries.
You don't know who else. I mean, I walked in November and 2 old ladies were walking out.
Yeah.
So it's like you don't know who's been in there and
especially
who hasn't.
in highly
anyways.
populated areas.
So it's like you don't know if. I mean, it's not like private land where if I don't go in there, no one's going in there.
Yeah.
Odds are someone was on that food plot probably 2 days before.
Someone's
there
probably
anyways.
walked past your stand within 7 days of you having it there.
And we've had several conversations on the podcast and in videos before about bumping bucks, and we won't get into that because that'll just take us off. But, bumping bucks is one time is not going to, or them smelling you one time isn't.
They can't, the biggest thing is they can't keep running every time they smell human scent, or they'd run until they died.
It's public land.
Like, you are a predator, just like they don't run every time they smell a coyote. Like, you're a predator.
It'd be the same thing whether they they come across a bobcat trail in the middle of the night or get spooked by coyotes on the food plot, which happens every night
time.
because they're down. You can hear them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if they ran every time they smelled a coyote, just like you said, predator. To them, you're a predator, just like a coyote or a bobcat.
Yeah.
They keep running.
They don't know you're a
can't.
human with a bow that's hunting on the weekends,
Predator.
and now you're in there scouting.
Yeah.
Like,
It's just
you're
predator.
just a predator.
So it's just but the in-season scouting worked for us. So if you don't want to in-season scout, you feel it hurts you, don't do it.
Yeah.
But we feel like it helps us, and it's a tactic that if you're not on the deer, we feel like you can use if you feel like you want to use it to go in and do it.
That's the biggest thing in replying to those comments and stuff, was just, this is how we do it. It doesn't mean you have to do it, but that helped us find the deer. So it's like, this is just our strategy, our way of doing things, and we want to share that with you so that if you like it, you can take some away from it. If you're like, that's stupid, you don't got to do it. It's just our opinion and how we go about doing things.
So that was the big takeaway from me that I used several more times throughout the year, was if I'm not finding the deer and our kind of bouncing around method we typically use, that's not working, take a day and just scout, because every time we did it, it yielded results for us
It
later
yielded
on.
deer results in the hunt the very next day.
That was our big September thing.
And I think for that, it was more useful for us, instead of looking at the map and throwing a sit at a new area, thinking maybe the deer are over here. We should have been, let's just not hunt today. Take the time maybe to take that day, go scout an area, and it'll put you farther ahead than throwing a sit at an area.
Yep.
For me, it was the standing corn, for whatever reason, this year was big, and I think that's something we'll at least try to focus on next year and see if it's the same thing. And that's where we were seeing them all September. When we finally found the deer, was on the transitions and that standing corn.
Yeah, we were sitting over and trying the soybean tactic, which is typically where people go in September and August, obviously to film velvet and all that stuff. But it was, for us, when we found what little deer we found early on in September, it was like grassy field edges and standing corn.
Yeah.
It's where the deer were coming out of.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a thing we've just missed the past couple of years, or if that was just a this year thing with all the water, or I don't know. But it was definitely, we found the standing corn, we found the deer. So moving into October, what was anything in October? My big thing was that I needed the buck to walk back 5 more yards, because I mean, that was the first real close encounter we had of the fall, I believe.
Yeah.
Was
you
that
can
big...
talk about that real quick.
Yeah, so we went into, it's kind of, we call it the rifle property if you watch any of our videos, and we put some trail cameras down there, got some good trail cam pictures, and this property just always has bucks. For some reason, looking at it on a map, you wouldn't think it, like, at all.
No.
But it always has bucks. So I went to this back draw, that's kind of where we thought they were, and I actually went in like 2 hours early because my phone told me the wrong sunset time, but was good because I was in, and I just sneak in, find a creative way to sneak in through the soybeans using kind of the divots in the field to get in. And it wasn't too long, I heard something walking on the other side of the cedar tree, and there was a like really big 5x5 come walking. Got about to where the fence was to go over from the private, which he was on, onto the public. I was just sitting waiting like broadside, and he never crossed it and walked straight down it, and I don't know. Eventually walked off to the east there, but a really nice close encounter with a really nice 5x5. I haven't even rewatched the video yet. I probably will here in the off season, but
but how we found that spot was obviously we had hunted there the year before and bumped that rifle buck out of there. We're like, maybe it's a place we can go. It's surrounded by food that we can actually hunt.
And again, circling back around, standing corn pretty much all around it.
Yeah, on all sides. So that's why we were like, well, maybe it's got the standing corn, it's got some beans out there. Might be a good place. Throw a camera up there. So I think you threw a camera up there in mid-August or something like that.
Yep.
And it was running. And I think you put the camera back up just for why not let it run. Put it up there. Didn't hunt it for a long time.
We need a specific wind, like very specific to hunt that draw. That's why we had to pick, and it had to be off on the right day to do it. So that's why it took a while to get back.
So that camera just ran there for a long time. Chance went and grabbed it real quick. Just walked in, grabbed it, looked at it, and there was probably one just giant buck that was on there, and just a whole bunch of other good bucks. And I think they were coming past there a couple times.
Yep.
So then we were trying to look at it and figuring out where they were bedded, because there's just not much place on this property where they can bed. They have to be either clear to the south on the neighbors, and they weren't coming from that direction. They were coming from really the only area that they could be bedding, and that was that cedar thicket draw that's on the private side.
Yeah, because we knew that's where they had to be bedding. Yeah. So I just went and set up on the edge of that fence
row. And
it
seemed crazy, because it's like, I'm going to go down here, there's like, this much, 6 foot of fence line that has some trees in it on the public side, sitting over this private little teeny tiny cedar tree draw, when I could hunt 99% of the rest of this property, and I'm sitting right here, but we knew that had to be the only place they were.
Yep, and it was like, if you were going, like if there was going to be a buck bedded, it was there, so you had to go in and get closer. Like you said, it seems crazy to hunt 1%, and like you had to have a very specific thing happen, but that very specific thing, like pretty much almost happened if he takes 2 more steps.
Yeah, and it worked with, it's kind of a hill that goes back up this way, south wind, standing corn on the backside. So when we started thinking about it, we're like, that sets up really, really well for the deer to be in there and for those bucks to be bedded in there.
Yep, and if you followed that edge, it came right to where the camera was. So it all kind of worked out, and it turns out that's where they were. Always had does in there. We went back. It turns out the rest of the year, we never got the correct wind to go back when we needed to.
We needed a
and then Brody went
south wind and did not get
and Brody went back once or twice, and there was picking corn one time, and there was people down there one other time.
Me and you went back, right? Pretty close to after you
to try and
had
get that
seen
same
him
buck.
To get him again, and the guy came through and picked the beans,
but
bumped out next to us, but bumped out
3 bucks, a small one and 2 4x4s at least.
Yeah, bumped them out of the bigger draw, so we knew there were still lots of good bucks in there. And then we hunted back here in some different places. I went back, and then he was picking corn that was on the back side of the bedding area. So I flipped around to the big draw and saw a couple does, so they weren't going to be in that draw when he's picking right behind them. And then we just never got back down there. And I think once the crops were out of there, standing corn kind of made a little bit of difference probably.
Yeah.
There. So we started hunting down here in October and trying to figure things out with the flooding. And I can't remember what we saw. Oh, I came in and hunted back at the high wall setup. Me and Dad did, and I saw those 2 or 3 bucks.
Oh yeah.
A little bit farther into that setup that kind of set up how we hunted the whole rest of the year. But came in early season hunt, 10 o'clock in the morning. Bunch of does kept coming in, and then these 2 really nice bucks came through. That was probably close to the last weekend in October. So that was back there in the high wall. But I think that was about it for October. But those hunts at the high wall, then seeing those 2 bucks kind of set up our plan as we moved into November and December for the high wall area.
Yep, and you did a lot of hunting back at the high wall in November. You want to touch on that quick? And we did some. Then me, you, and Dad all got together back kind of in my part of the state too later on. We've seen some good bucks. Brody went to the marsh unit, seen really nice bucks, and then we went back and hunted that a couple times, and they didn't show up.
Mm-hmm. Saw
Sa-
2 nice bucks
same-
when I set up
Yeah.
on the marsh that day,
Yeah.
and then like 3 or 4 spikes that were back
Yep.
in there.
And then I went in a couple times, didn't hardly see any. I mean, seen that one run across the field that was on private.
Yep. And that was the buck that I had seen 5 days earlier.
Yeah,
Or so.
we kind of, I mean, November was kind of a seen them, and then we'd move, and then we wouldn't see anything type of a thing. Same kind of setup with the high wall. We're moving, trying to find them, and we'd see them every once in a while, but it just wasn't.
There's no consistency to
Yeah.
our buck sightings for whatever reason.
Yeah, so I mean, we'd see them, and then we'd make plans, and nothing else would ever kind of show up. So I know it's kind of a weird November for us as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Rutting activity, I didn't really see
Not
too
much.
much
But
around
I
now.
hunted the marsh unit and had that small buck come through with that doe. But other than that, I didn't see any bucks
Yeah.
chasing or anything. I mean,
Dad,
obviously they were.
when
but
me, you, and Dad all got together, same day you seen those 2 big ones in the marsh. He's seen some running activity through his area, but that just tells you just where you sit, because I wasn't too far from him and I didn't see anything.
Yeah.
So
I mean, obviously they were, but we just didn't see it in those areas that we were in.
that we were expecting it
Yep.
to be in. And then rifle season rolled through.
My takeaway, I guess, going back a little bit for November, and the thing that I'm trying to focus on more is now we've done a good job progressing as hunters in finding the areas on a map, and I think the next step is taking it so that the first setup in there is the correct one, which is, you never know. It's hard to do, and you could sit here and it could be right here, but that big buck that I saw, I kind of knew that I needed to walk down the edge of that marsh a little bit farther. And if you think about it, where this transition and this transition comes together, we preach that all the time, and then I didn't listen to my own self when I went in there in the morning, because I didn't want to walk around that pin oak and try to get down there and screw too much up. But I knew that's where I should have been set up. Had I been there, you probably have an opportunity at that big buck. So I think the next step, we've done good at the scouting to find our area, and then looking at the map, finding that area on a map and going, we don't need to go here, we need to go right here, looking at the transitions and all that stuff in the bedding. The next step is picking the right spot when we're in there with the stand or the saddle for that hunt. So I think that's the thing for us to focus on now, is as we progress, take those steps, now it's picking the right spot when we're in there.
And so as we rolled through, rifle season was slow for pretty much all 3 of us, so there's not much to talk about there. We just hunt small piece of private, and it's usually pretty slow. So not much to talk about there. And then our big plan was we needed to get back to the high wall, because we'd seen big bucks back there as well the last 2 years.
And we knew the water levels in there were so high that it was going to keep a lot of the rifle hunters that hunt there out of that piece of property, especially back in that high wall. So we knew, or we thought anyway, that there was going to be some bucks back there.
Yep, and then I guess, so long story short, the food plot I set over that had deer in it last year just had a bunch of does, which it was consistent for does.
And you put a camera up too as well, just to kind of monitor when you weren't there, just to see if what you were seeing when you hunted it a couple times was what was happening, and it basically was.
It was does and a couple smaller bucks, and there was like 1 or 2 maybe that would have shot, but it was all middle of the night. The problem,
1 o'clock in the morning,
bedding anywhere close to that food plot,
like they were,
and there
for
was
whatever
nothing,
reason before.
Yeah, and there's nothing we could do based on how the public set up. We couldn't get any closer. So I know that's a problem you guys have emailed us on before. It's like sometimes you can get.
I know the bedding's right there.
You can get as close as you can get to it, but sometimes it's just not close enough. And that was the problem this year there. And the high wall we're not quite sure what's going on back there. The rivers down here, based on where it's at and all the flooding we got, are running super high, and they've been running super high, and it just cuts off that high wall spot, and it's just not the traffic back
there. Just the whole connectedness of the properties, and how, because obviously if you guys watched this last season, and we'll throw some footage up if you're watching the video podcast, but that hunt I had in September where I probably saw 50 deer in one day and 4 or 5 bucks, they were all crossing this river, going from the food, crossing it, and going back into this bedding area. And with the river being 8-9 feet high, they're not doing that, because it was, under your boots.
They could walk, and it was only chest deep for them.
At the deepest
3
spots,
feet,
and I could cross it without waders, so it was below my knee for my boot. So that's what it was before. So they just were crossing, going to food, rut. They were just more connected, where they can't do that now because it's an 8 foot deep.
I mean,
river.
A deer could cross it if it's run from a coyote or a spooked out. They would cross it, but they're not just going to do it like they normally did, and that really cut off travel. I think that was part of it.
Yeah.
We've hunted back at the high wall now 2 years, and we couldn't go 2 sits without seeing a shooter buck back there. So it was just kind of a weird year for the high wall.
And we could see on the trees where the watermark from earlier, from the summer, early spring, had been
waist high.
If this is the ground, it's waist high to knee
And
high
there's still
on the
water back
trees,
there.
and there's still water back there. So when that came through, the deer that were using it were like, I'm just going to get out of here, and never came back, and that slowed things down. The connectedness of it, I think the water had more of an effect than we thought.
To go next year if we get a somewhat dry summer, see if it comes back or see what the deal is. So we kind of hit September slow finding deer. October was decent. November was slow for November, but for our season it was decent. And then December we just ran into a series of unfortunate problems throughout that Mother Nature threw at us that slowed that down.
Yeah. And for December going in, you're talking about muzzleloader hunting, I had to go back to the high wall, like we said, to try to get in there and see if those deer were in there.
Yep, so we just kind of tried to, what we were using in December was past knowledge, essentially. I knew from December or January 1st, after season got over with last year, that this is the 2 spots we were going in December. So we pretty much used past information for our muzzleloader hunting this year, and things didn't play out the same or similar even as they did the year before, so that kind of made us have to alter our plans.
We were feeling pretty good about December with the muzzleloader. We were definitely getting another muzzleloader because I went in with my bow, and that buck stayed at like 35 yards for literally an hour, just eating locust pods and stuff. So we're definitely getting another muzzleloader. Hopefully that helps.
Yep. And real quick, to wrap it up, just your main takeaway or what you learned from this year that you're really going to focus on and carry over into next year. Just real quick, wrap it up.
For me, I mentioned it earlier, and it's just taking the next step of picking the right spot. Like I said, we know the right spot from scouting and then looking at a map. But now, for me, my next step is focusing on picking the right spot once I'm in there with that stand on my back. Looking at things, thinking about it, picking that best spot so that when that buck walks by, I can be in the right spot.
Yep. And mine is kind of scouting related too. The thing I talked about earlier is if we're not on the deer to spend a day scouting, I want to make sure I remember that. The other thing is I just want to do more scouting. So my thing is I want to scout more. Like I want to know by the time September rolls around where I'm going, where my good spots are, hopefully narrow things down a little bit. I mean, you never quite know for sure because you think you might know and they're over here or they're over here. But more scouting for me this summer and this off season, and then scouting during the year if we're not on the deer.
Yep.
So that will wrap it up. Just kind of an overview over our deer season, kind of what we learned, some of the takeaways, and just bring you all the way through it in one video instead of a whole bunch of short ones. So you can go back and watch any of the videos if you want to. They're all, of course, on our YouTube channel. We're going to have more podcasts, more scouting, shed hunting hopefully here if the snow stays away in a month or so. So more videos, so keep checking back. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe.